So coming up is going to be Dana White's Contender Series week number 9, and we are getting towards the very end of the Dana White's Contender Series 2023 season, and this is going to be one of the better cards to kind of close out the season. Of course, we do have one more after this, but towards the end, they've saved some of the best for last. This is a fantastic card. Look at it on paper. Look at the records. You know, I know that the records don't tell all, but this is a very high level card, and it probably is top to bottom the highest level Dana White's Contender Series card of the season. I very much could see 5 contracts given out, maybe 6 contracts if fights do end up being as exciting as I think they potentially could. But this is a good card, man. Just look at it. You've got the 2 guys from Bahrain training out of KHK MMA, as well as that co-main event there, Eduardo Matias Torres taking on Victor Hugo Silva. Absolutely ridiculous fight. The opener is crazy. Raimond Magomedaliev has fought some great competition over at One Championship, and now he's on the Contender Series. I mean, this is crazy. This is a great card. Before we do get into it, though, and before I do give all of my predictions, you can sign up to We Want Picks with a 3-day free trial. Cancel at any time during that 3-day period over there. Sign up with my code ARTEM. And then, of course, as well as that, you do have my BetUS link, 125% bonus there. And with all of that being said, let's now get into my picks. So kicking off the card, we've got a flyweight bout, which should set the stage for what is to come later on in the card. And that is a very fun fight here. Lucas Rocha taking on Davi Bittencourt. Now, it is worth noting that Davi Bittencourt also does go by Davy Costa, so you might find a lot more fights under him if you're trying to find tape on him yourself. But this is a good matchup, you know. Obviously, both guys are very well-rounded. To get to this point, especially at 125 pounds, you do have to be good everywhere. But I would say Lucas Rocha is probably more of a striker, and Davi Bittencourt is more of a grappler. And that really could come into play here when you just look at the size of these guys. Because Lucas Rocha, on paper, he is a small guy. He's 5'2", and he has fought at men's 115 pounds in the past. And you can see that he is smaller than a lot of his opponents. And Davi Bittencourt, although he is pretty small for 125 himself as well, he's 5'4". He does have a bit more of a muscular build to him. You can see that he is a bit bigger overall at 125 than Lucas Rocha. But on the feet, I think that Lucas Rocha will be the better striker. And on the ground, I think Davi Bittencourt will be the better offensive grappler. The thing about Lucas Rocha that is a good thing, that's also not necessarily a good thing, is you can see Lucas Rocha get taken down and have to fight out of pretty bad grappling situations. In his most recent fight against Matias da Silva, Matias da Silva was able to get his back and kind of control him for a very long period of time in round number 1. But Rocha was able to fight out of that and then keep the fight on the feet for rounds 2 and 3. And then move on to win the decision. Before that as well, you know, you can see him getting taken down. You can see him knocking people out early on in fights as well. He has been caught once, but that was very early on in his career. In 2019, he would have been 19 years old at the time. And after that, that's when he started fighting, I believe, more committed to 125. And here he is now taking on Davi Costa, who has fought good competition himself. You know, earlier on in his career, he hasn't really fought the best guys, but he come over to LFA, and he's beaten 2 pretty good guys, or 1 good guy in LFA, and then 1 pretty good guy over at Shuto. But the problem with Davi Bittencourt that I've noticed, especially in some of those fights when he takes on more higher level opponents, Davi Bittencourt gets caught on the feet. I've seen Davi Bittencourt get hurt. I've even seen him get dropped. And I think that if Lucas Rocha touches you and lands with that power and that aggressiveness that he does have, I think that he could really capitalize on an opportunity like that. I'm seeing a lot of people on Davi Costa. I'm seeing a lot of people that do the kind of videos that I do on Davi Costa. But I'm looking at this fight, man. I'm telling you guys that this is definitely a 50-50 fight. Very close. The odds aren't out yet at the time I'm recording this video, so I don't know what they are. But this is a really close fight, and I do believe that the odds are going to be pretty close down the middle. My pick is Lucas Rocha, though. I am going to trust Lucas Rocha to defend takedowns against Davi Bittencourt, and as long as the fight is on the feet, Lucas Rocha is going to be the more dangerous fighter. Davi Bittencourt is going to be in a little bit of trouble, and I do believe Lucas Rocha should be able to find the finish by knockout at some point in this fight. But if Davi Bittencourt goes out here, gets the takedowns, out-grapples Lucas Rocha, I honestly wouldn't be that surprised. This is an incredibly close fight, an incredibly competitive fight. Very high level for men's 125. Lucas Rocha does have flaws of his own, especially with that takedown defense. But I think that he is going to be the guy that's going to be moving forward on the feet. I think he's going to be more aggressive on the feet, and I do think that he can catch Davi Bittencourt. But I do want to emphasize, close fight, extremely high level, absolutely a UFC level fight. And look at that afro. I mean, David Costa, he rocks the afro. I mean, it really suits him, to be honest. Not a lot of people can rock an afro like that, but Bittencourt can. I am going to go with Rocha to win this matchup. I think he can catch Bittencourt at some point in the matchup. So give me Rocha by knockout. Just at some point in the fight. Honestly, could be early. It could be late. But I think he does get it done on the feet over Davi. This next fight's going to be at men's welterweight between two strikers, Mauricio Ruffy and Raimond Magomedaliev. Now, Mauricio Ruffy, he's from Brazil. 8 wins by knockout. And Raimond Magomedaliev, you will notice, he is pretty old for the Contender Series. He's 33 years old, but he's had an entire career over at a different major MMA organization, and that was one championship. He had a pretty good run over at one, took on James Nakashima, who was 9-0 at the time, and then from there, he went on a pretty good run over some pretty good fighters, eventually signing with the Eagle FC, which was Khabib's promotion, still is, I believe, when they were trying to build up in the USA. And he took on former UFC fighter Anthony Njokuani, won that fight in the first round, and then won a very close decision against Impa. In that fight against Anthony Njokuani, he comes out very, very light on his feet, throws a head kick early into the fight, rocks Anthony Njokuani to that matchup, and then from there, he just throws like 3 or 4 more head kicks. He doesn't get the KO that he was probably looking for with the head kicks, and he just decides, oh, okay, I'll just take him down. So he takes him down and dominates it from there. And then against Impa, a little bit of wrestling happened in that fight. Well, quite a bit, really, but a lot of the time, Impa ended up on top. Sometimes Raimond ended up on top. The fight was really boring, to be honest, but to be fair, I think Impa Kasanganay probably should have won that decision, but I think it's that win over Impa Kasanganay that has gotten him this opportunity, because if he does beat Ruffy and move into the UFC can kind of say that he beat Impa Kasanganay, because Impa is probably potentially going to go on to become a PFL champion. As for Ruffy, he definitely has not fought the same level of competition. You know, his best winners over Torres, who just has a ridiculous amount of experience. And then his other best winners over an 11-6 opponent before that. He's not really fighting the best guys, but he is knocking them out very early. He did get caught by Manuel Souza, but Manuel Souza is a pretty good fighter himself, to be fair. Now, the win over Torres, towards the end of that fight, he was just putting a beating on Torres, man. But in this fight, though, Raimond Magomedaliev, I like his kickboxing style against Ruffy. Now, Ruffy, he is pretty technical, but he's a little bit more of a brawler. He likes to be aggressive. Now, Raimond is relatively patient. He's very light on his feet, as I said again, especially when he took on Njokuani. But Magomedaliev, the problem with him is his gas tank is really scary to me. I don't know necessarily what it is about it, because it's not something that has gotten better over time. I mean, his gas tank in one championship was really bad, especially if he leaves the first round against this fighter here, Talha Maguire. I thought that he looked really bad in the third round. In the second round, he started slowing down as well. And as in by bad, I mean he looked slowed down, like he had gassed out. He slowed down a lot against Impa Kasanganay after the fight left the first round as well. It's not something that's getting better. And I think it might just be because he's absolutely massive for 170. I know he's listed at 6'1", which isn't necessarily insanely tall for the weight class, but he's a very big welterweight, or at least he's looked like a big welterweight compared to a lot of his opponents that he's fought in the past. Mauricio Ruffy, 5'11", a little bit more of a brawler, has better cardio. I would say the problem is, though, necessarily can't really tell how good his cardio really is, as he's only left the first round a couple of times, and one of those wins was over Torres, where Torres had nothing left in the second round, to be fair, either. So not a lot to really go off on the cardio side of Ruffy, but Magomedaliev's cardio is something that really could fail him in this matchup, but I'm still going to pick him anyway. Raimond Magomedaliev, he has the option to wrestle if he wants to. He probably will. I would be surprised if he doesn't. But even then, on the feet, I think he is more technical. And if he can keep it up for at least 2 rounds, he should be able to get through and win this fight. It should be pretty fun. If Ruffy comes out here super aggressive, makes Raimond Magomedaliev work, start to worry about the cardio, because Magomedaliev cannot keep up a high pace for at least 1 round, unless in the very long time that he's had off, he hasn't fought for a year and 6 months, his cardio looks drastically improved. I am going to go with Magomedaliev. I'm going to go with Magomedaliev by decision. I am going to respect Ruffy's skill set to pick him by decision. But if Magomedaliev wins by finish, it's probably going to be in the first, because after that he is going to slow down. So give me Raimond Magomedaliev to win by decision or first round KO. A little bit of a weird sort of prop pick there, but that is how I see the fight going. Give me Magomedaliev to win. This next fight features one of two fighters from Bahrain on the card. It's going to be Magomed Gadzhiyasulov taking on Jose Daniel Medina. And I'm not going to go too in-depth with this one here because I'm pretty confident Gadzhiyasulov is going to be able to get the win. And I do believe he should be able to get the win by finish. If you look at Gadzhiyasulov, very good amateur career, a lot of wins for IMMAF, and then also when he became a pro, a lot of first round finishes over not the best competition at all, to be fair, but when he did take on a very solid opponent, it was against Muhammad Saeed Malim at Brave, and in that matchup he had to resort using his wrestling and then winning the fight by decision, kind of controlling on top for most of the matchup. Medina hasn't done anything that's going to tell me that he's got a really good shot in this matchup. Very close fight against a 4-2 opponent recently. His best win, I would say, is over this 2-0 guy, but the problem is Pacquiao looked like he had absolutely no idea what he was doing when the fight got down to the ground. I mean, maybe something could happen, maybe there could be a big upset, but I think Magomed is going to be a really big favorite, and I think probably deservedly so. I feel like this is the kind of fight where he's going to look really good. He should be able to get Daniel Medina down, or maybe even bomb forward on the feet and get the KO. And then when he gets into the UFC, that's maybe when the finishes stop coming and the wins by decision have to start happening again, like he did in Brave. But this, I mean, the difference in level between these two guys is pretty major. I'm pretty confident Gadzhiyasulov gets it done. So give me him to win this matchup by finish. It'll be interesting to see if he can get quite far in the UFC after this fight here. And now we get into the big fight that everyone's going to be talking about, that everyone is going to be excited for. Eduardo Matias Torres taking on Victor Hugo Silva. This is the fight that I'm also excited for. But I have so many questions about this matchup, and I believe a lot of them are going to be answered during the fight. But one of them is going to be answered during the weigh-ins, and I will get into that when it does come up. But yeah, there's so many questions about this fight. It's impossible, in my opinion, to be confident on one side because there's not a lot of tape out there on Victor Hugo Silva. There is tape out there on Eduardo Matias Torres, but if you look at it, man, he has not fought the best competition in the world. Very, very good win over Rodrigo Vera, to be fair, but that was in 2019, and since then, he just hasn't really fought the best guys ever, really. But the reason why, I would say, is because he doesn't fight outside of Chile, so he's just absolutely tearing up the Chile regional scene, and is beating all of these guys that are fighting in Chile at his weight class, I guess. So he's just beating the guys that come up in front of him, which is fair, but he's not looking the best doing it, in my opinion. He is a striker for the most part. Now, he does have a lot of submission wins, especially early on into his career, but I would say that Eduardo Matias Torres is mostly a boxer. He's 5'8" for 135, but he fights really, really long. He must have a pretty long reach, I would say. It's not listed here, but he fights from range a lot. He boxes, he can close the distance, and get wins like that, but he does strike from distance. He does kick from distance as well, but I would say his best attribute is probably his boxing. Now, he does get taken down quite a bit by pretty, I'm going to be honest, not the best opponents, and to be fair though, a lot of his opponents, as soon as the fight begins, they try and take him down, and Eduardo Matias Torres, for the most part, has success defending the takedown, but I have seen him taken down by much lesser wrestlers than Victor Hugo Silva, in my opinion. Now, there are questions about Eduardo Matias Torres and the competition that he's faced, but they do not compare to the questions that I have about Victor Hugo Silva, because I have many, many questions about it, and one of them is, why is this fight at 135 pounds for him? Because he has not fought at 135 in years. You can look in 2019, he had this break between 2019 and 2022, and in this span of 2022 to 2023, he's fought at 145, 155, and 170. He has never fought at 135 pounds in the last few years. I've got absolutely no idea if he's going to make the weight. I can't be confident thinking that he's going to make the weight. He hasn't done it for a long, long time. Now, he has actually fought some pretty good guys, but the problem is, there's not a lot of tape on him really anywhere. I was able to find his fight against Whitson Costa. I was able to find his fight against Ronaldo Guerrera, but I wasn't able to find his more recent fights, which is what I really, really wanted to find. And he does train out of the very notorious Astra Fight Team. And if you are unfamiliar with Astra Fight Team, these guys are notorious for padding their fighters' records. You'll see a lot of really good records in here. A lot of guys that come into the UFC with records like 18-0, 17-2. I mean, for Simon Oliveira, 18-3. You know, and Victor Hugo Silva, 23-4. Good wins on his record, though, to be fair. But this fighter, Guerrera, was like 40 years old when he fought him. He's 37. Now, there's so many questions, man. Like, is Victor Hugo going to make the weight? But in my opinion, it's a good matchup for him because Victor Hugo Silva, he's a grappler. I know his nickname is Striker, and you will find a lot of fights on him as Hugo Silva or Victor Striker or Hugo Striker. I mean, there's so many different names that this guy has fought under in the past. I mean, there's questions, man. There really is. But the way that he fights, in my opinion, is going to be really good to beat a guy like Eduardo Matias Torres, because on the feet, he's going to be a good striker. Maybe Eduardo Matias Torres will have success of his own, but I believe that Victor Hugo Silva on the feet can hang with Eduardo Matias Torres, and he's got that grappling as well that he can go to. You see Victor Hugo Silva, you watch his highlights, he's in there, he's in the pocket, he's swinging hooks, and then he just ducks under, gets a takedown, and slams his opponents down. I think that's what he's going to do. I think he's going to crash forward here, throw hooks, throw bombs, and then just get into the hips of Torres and smash him down to the ground and try and out-grapple him from there. Now, yes, Eduardo Matias Torres is going to fight from range and try and prevent that, but, I mean, as I said, there's so many questions. There's not a lot of tape out there on these guys. I could only really tell you from what I've seen, but from what I've seen, if Victor Hugo Silva goes out there with a game plan to close the distance and to wrestle and to grapple, he absolutely should be able to win this matchup. I'm going to go with Silva here. Very low confidence pick. I mean, most people are on Torres. I've talked to a couple of people that do predictions like me. They're also on Torres, if that kind of gives you any indication. In my opinion, although this looks like a fun fight to bet on, I would very heavily advise not to. I think this is a fight to avoid from a betting perspective. I gave you guys a lot of red flags about both of these guys, in my opinion, and it really just is the lack of tape on Hugo Silva and the lack of good competition from Eduardo Matias Torres. And even from both guys, pretty bad. So I'm sorry to be a bit of a downer on this matchup. I've got no doubt it's going to be a fun one. But man, I've got questions, man. I really do. And I'm sorry that was a 6-minute breakdown. But I wanted to warn you guys about this fight, because I think this is a fight to really avoid. And now we've got the main event. It's going to be Rodolfo Bellato taking on Murtaza Talha. And this is a good one. You know, it's actually not a bad matchup for Rodolfo Bellato, even though I did say that the UFC is probably trying to get these guys from Bahrain into the UFC. Bellato has a real shot in this matchup because he is a wrestler and a grappler himself, and that is what Murtaza Talha does. Now, Bellato, he was on the Contender Series before, got knocked out by Vita Petrino for the second time because he fought Petrino in the past, and then they did the rematch. Very fun fight, but Petrino was able to knock him out. And since then, he did beat Acacio dos Santos by decision in what was a really boring fight. He just got Acacio dos Santos down and controlled on top every single round. The fight sucked. I actually watched that card live, and it was really bad. The crowd was booing. Just a terribly boring fight for Bellato, but he is a wrestler. He is a grappler. Now to talk about Murtaza Talha. I think this guy is really good, but I think he's too small for 205 pounds. This is a light heavyweight fight, and I think Talha really could fight at 185 pounds. He's 6 foot tall, but man, is he skilled. But man, I just don't see him at 205 in the UFC. I can really see him coming down to 185. If you look at this guy, really good boxer, but the way that he gets his fights done is in the wrestling and the ground and pound. He gets fighters down, he takes them down, he just absolutely smashes them with ground and pound. It's absolutely ridiculous the power that this guy has when he gets his opponents down to the ground. And unlike Gadzhiyasulov, his pro career, he's fought some good guys, man. He made his debut against a 4-1 opponent, and then another 4-1 opponent. He did take on a guy making his debut when he was 3-0, but since then, 7-1, 8-2, and he beat those fighters by submission, set up by his insane ground and pound. You watch him fight, very aggressive on the feet, very aggressive boxer, gets the takedown and just absolutely smashes his opponents with ground and pound. He's never really faced any adversity. Now, that could be something to worry about, because if Bellato does give him some adversity, then we could see something interesting play out. But man, I really do believe that if Murtaza Talha can get this fight down to the ground, can get on top, and avoid submission attempts from Bellato, because if he can get Bellato down, which I think he can, Bellato will be throwing up subs. Bellato is a grappler. He is a jiu-jitsu guy at 205 pounds, but on the feet, Bellato isn't very defensively sound. It's not really something that he's been able to fix, and I think Talha is going to bomb forward using his boxing, get the takedown, and just absolutely smash him with ground and pound. I'm going to go with Murtaza Talha to win by ground and pound in round number 1 or round number 2. That's my breakdown for that fight. Another quick one. I can see what the UFC is trying to do, man, for these guys from Bahrain. But in my opinion, a closer fight than the Gadzhiyasulov Medina fight. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know what you think of this card. I'm very looking forward to it. That's why this video is so long. But I will see you guys in the next one. It should be a very, very high level Dana White's Contender Series card.